When 23-year-old Louis Brandt began the company that was to become the iconic watch brand Omega in a small shop in 1848, he had absolutely no idea what his love and undiluted passion for watchmaking had birthed into the world. Today, that company has revolutionized the history of watchmaking forever and has achieved feats that no other watchmaking brand has ever accomplished. Omega's one-of-a-kind and exquisitely unique timepieces will forever continue to be admired by watch lovers all over the world. But how exactly did this historic and iconic watchmaker come to be? In this video, we will uncover how Omega becomes one of the most legendary watchmakers the world has ever seen. Omega watches began in a small workshop in the small Swiss village of La Chaux-de-Fonds after a young watchmaker decided to showcase his passion for watchmaking using the tiny workshop in his family's villa. Brandt went on to maintain the business for well over 30 years and succeeded in growing it into a modest business with a considerable customer base to which he sold his skillfully made watches all across the world. After he passed away in 1879, his two sons, Louis Paul and Caesar, took over the family's business to continue with their father's vision and passion for exquisite watchmaking and masterful precision. The pair had absolutely no idea that just like their father, their shared passion for watchmaking would lead them to revolutionizing and changing the destiny of the watchmaking industry forever. The brothers adopted a new name, Louis Brandt et Fils, for the growing company in 1880 and then proceeded to move the business from its location of over 30 years to a more modern and bustling town of Bienne. First, they moved the company to a rather modest building on 119 Route de Bougeon, before relocating to 96 Rue Jacob, an address that remains the company's headquarters till this moment. It'll take the brothers 5 whole years after moving to their new location before releasing their first mass-produced watch series, the Labrador. This watch was unprecedented in terms of technological advancement and hyper-impressive timing results. This strong debut would provide the perfect background for the brothers to launch even more impressive and groundbreaking innovations in the industry. By 1892, the brothers would go on to make history and prove to be a pioneering brand in the watchmaking industry. They developed the first ever minute-repeating timepiece, a much smaller version of existing pocket watches that were common at the time. Being the first and only minute-repeating wristwatch ever made, the unique timepiece gained wide admiration globally, and very quickly the company's reputation as an iconic watch brand soared beyond measure. Only 2 years later, they launched the 19-line Omega Caliber, which revolutionized watchmaking as it was known at the time and sent very strong ripples throughout the industry. This was all less than 10 years since their first release, and only 2 years since their groundbreaking minute-repeating invention. The brand essentially became a leading force, redefining watchmaking as no other brand had ever done. The 19-line Omega Caliber would become so popular and reputable globally, forcing the company to change its name again to Omega Watch Company, in recognition of the iconic and legendary status that the pace-setting timepiece had successfully attained. The 19 caliber used revolutionary new methods and set a new standard for watchmaking. The brothers were confident that the series' key feature of precise movements was the future of watchmaking, and continued to make watches with all of these dominant features. By 1903, Omega had become the largest manufacturer of finished and exquisite watches in Switzerland, and had even developed a research and development facility for horology. The new symbol for the brand would be released in 1895, and it was an image of the ancient Greek deity Kronos, carrying and pointing a lance at the name Omega, which was written on the globe to depict the brand's universality. Omega would continue to attain new feats in watchmaking and see its reputation continue to soar. In 1900, the company would be conferred the greatest honor given to any brand at the time after it received the grand prize at the 1900 Universal Exposition in Paris for its highly extravagantly decorated 1896 gold Greek temple pocket watch. The award was the greatest testament of recognition for the unmatched technological advancements that the brand has attained during a time that was particularly a notable period for scientific achievement. In 1905, Omega was contracted to be the official timekeeper at sporting events throughout Switzerland. In 1932, the company would go on to secure what remains one of its most vital timekeeping partnerships to date. Omega earned a much bigger title as the official timekeeper for the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, California, a partnership that continues to this day after having served as the official timekeeper at over 20 Olympic Games. Omega would go on to introduce the first edition of one of its most symbolic and iconic watches, the Seamaster, just a little over a decade later in 1948. The Seamaster was invented to mark the celebration of the centenary since the company was founded, as well as the return to a new peaceful normalcy following the horrific events of World War II. To date, Omega's Seamaster remains one of the most legendary timepieces ever made. Omega's modern era began in 1957 after the brand launched its holy trinity of tool watches, the updated Seamaster 300, the Speedmaster, and the Railmaster. These watches were designed in line with Omega's vision to meet the needs of its users who desired a watch that could serve multiple purposes. The Holy Trinity watches were built for diving, precision timing, and very uncommon at the time, to resist electromagnetic fields. This third functionality of the watch attracted a lot of railway workers to the brand. These innovations were praised as the foundation of Omega's new product line, especially under the new leadership of Joseph Reiser, who had taken over as CEO in 1955. But Omega was just getting started. Omega would again make history in 1962 when a NASA astronaut by the name Wally Schirra wore a Speedmaster on his Mercury Sigma 7 mission to space. This made the Speedmaster the first ever wristwatch to make it to outer space. This incredible feat would birth a lifelong partnership between the company and NASA, after the space agency endorsed Omega Watch as the official watch for space exploration. This historic moment essentially further raised the ranking and reputation of the Omega brand amongst its contemporaries. In 1969, the Omega Speedmaster would make history again after it was worn on the wrist of Buzz Aldrin and was a part of the first trip to the moon. Even until today, Omega continues to work in close partnership with space programs worldwide. All through the 1960s, Omega thoroughly explored new extremes, especially when it comes to stylish and tool-oriented watches, sometimes fusing the two together in watches like the Flightmaster and Ploprof. In 1975, the Speedmaster would get an extreme transformation from Omega with the 1045 TV dial model, which remains one of the most well-loved and collectible Speedies in the world today. While earlier Speedmasters had a round black dial as default, this special model had a sunburst blue dial and two-color hands and used heavy bar bracelets, which made them very chunky and obvious on the wrist. After an Omega Seamaster got featured in a James Bond film in 1990, Omega earned even more popularity and would ultimately get endorsed as the official watch of James Bond. With this endorsement, Omega earned even more global acclaim and proved that it was truly a watch befitting for every occasion, whether it be for a trip to space, sports, or pop culture. Swiss-made watches have long been the standard for excellence within the industry, and Omega played a huge role in this success after gaining a long-standing reputation for making exquisite and luxury watches of the highest caliber. Omega has continued to be a hugely successful watchmaker, even in the 21st century. Aside from being a top-rated quality watchmaker, Omega's viral success has been largely attributed to its aggressive advertising strategy. For many decades, Omega has been a sponsor for major sporting events. Some of the brand's most iconic watches have featured in major blockbuster and outer space travel movies, and they've also enjoyed the approval and endorsements of icons and celebrities across several industries. This approach has greatly helped in creating an aura of exclusivity that still encompasses the brand. And while Omega watches continue to be highly sought after, they are likewise very expensive, further positioning them for an elite audience. The brand's Seamaster Diver 300M 007 edition still appeared in the movie No Time to Die as recently as 2020. The most expensive Omega watch in existence is the Constellation Baguette, which is worth $700,000. It has 30 carats, 146 trapeze and baguette diamonds on the dial, 459 Wesselton diamonds, and a case made from the finest 18-karat white gold.